And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food.
I read your piece, and I heard you just mention it, the federal ban on price gouging for groceries. You are skeptical of this. Why?
First of all, nobody can explain what price gouging means. It's like that old line about pornography. I know it when I see it. In the sense that what does it mean to have an excessive price or an excessive profit margin? That seems to be shorthand for a price or a profit margin that bugs me. That seems too high. You know, it's very hard to pin down what this would actually mean. If you look at the legislation that, as I mentioned, is already in the Senate, led by Senate Warren and Senator Bob Casey and a slew of others, particular way that this is written, which is likely to be the template for any proposal that Harris would eventually embrace, is especially bad in that it just bans excessive prices, grossly excessive profit margins, and says that the Federal Trade Commission can use any metric it deems appropriate to decide what that would mean, which basically says, like, it's not going to be markets, it's not going to be supply and demand that's determining how much your grocery store charges you for milk or for eggs. It's going to be some bureaucrat in D.C., which seems like totally unworkable, first of all, for the FTC to be deciding like how much Kroger charges for eggs in Michigan. It also would be very bad for markets. We've seen this kind of thing tried in lots of other countries before: Venezuela, Argentina, the Soviet Union, etc. It leads to shortages. It leads to black markets, plenty of uncertainty. And beyond that, the specific way this bill is written might actually increase prices because of some of the other language in it. Things like requiring public companies to disclose in their quarterly reports, their quarterly earnings reports, how they're setting prices, which is a great way to help them collude, which normally we don't want them to do. So anyway, you know, the devil's in the details, I guess, for that bill, but it's really hard for me to imagine any form of legislation that preserves the spirit of what she's proposing. At best, do nothing. At worst, cause a lot of harm.
When I am elected president, I will make it a top priority to bring down costs and increase economic security for all Americans. So in the weeks to come, I will address in greater detail my plans to build an opportunity economy.
In your judgment, who's best for the economy? Who's best for the market?
Well, I think the market has spoken. I think a more deregulated environment that Trump is proposing and has implemented once in his last mandate is more popular for investors like me. There's no question about it. And in addition, Biden is associated with inflation. That's why households have actually lost their net worth and buying power. That's a known fact. That's not a debate anymore. Bidenomics, you can't sell that, so Harris won't. So, again, we're looking for the middle of the road here. But if you're asking me what I would put my money behind would be a more deregulated environment where I could invest in housing and have it cost less. And opening up tracts of land is not a bad idea. That includes opening up the Anwar for oil production, which we could use to reduce the national debt. I'm more pro-business. Obviously, I support American entrepreneurs, the 5 to 500 employee companies that represent 62% of jobs created in America. Those are my people. So we don't like regulation. We don't like high taxes. And we certainly don't like price controls.
We're going to open up tracts of federal land for housing construction. We desperately need housing for people who can't afford what's going on now.
Our country has come a long way since President Biden and I took office.
Catherine, what about the plan to offer this homeowner subsidy, $25,000 to first-time home buyers? Obviously, housing costs have become a concern for many Americans. Would that actually help, or would that drive, as some critics have argued, home prices up?
So that piece of her plan, I think, is likely to drive prices up. We already have really strong demand for housing. The problem is that there isn't enough supply. If you just give people even more money to spend on housing, regardless of who they are, that's probably just going to get passed through to the sellers. So it sounds nice, particularly for people who maybe don't have a lot of savings, but it's just going to get eaten up.
So listen, this election, I do strongly believe, is about two very different visions for our nation. One, ours, focused on the future, and the other focused on the past. We see that contrast clearly in many ways, including when it comes to how we think about the economy. We know that many Americans don't yet feel that progress in their daily lives. Costs are still too high. And on a deeper level, for too many people, no matter how much they work, it feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. So every day across our nation, families talk about their plans for the future, their ambitions, their aspirations for themselves, for their children. And they talk about how they're going to be able to actually achieve them financially. Because look, the bills add up. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes, prescription medication. After all that, for many families, there's not much left at the end of the month.